Thanks for joining us. The federal government has inaugurated the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage, which will begin consultation and negotiations for a new salary scheme for Nigerian workers. Vice President Kashim Shettima inaugurated this 37-member committee on behalf of the federal government. He reaffirmed the promise of President Bola Tinubu's administration to improve the welfare of Nigerian workers. Senator Kashim Shettima said, since the removal of petrol subsidy, the federal government has been implementing programs and initiatives to cushion the effect of economic hardship and rising inflation.
Our sense of duty today thrives on both our sensitivity to the conditions of the Nigerian worker and the impending expiration of the last minimum wage instrument in a few months' time. It is in recognition of the need to ensure a fair and decent living wage, and in compliance with the Act that the federal government has set in motion, necessary mechanisms to assemble this tripartite committee to chart a future that aligns with our collective interests.
We don't have any figure in mind. We want a very, very realistic approach based on certain conventions, based on the reality of the Nigerian economy.
So while we are talking about minimum wage, I think the government on their own side has to think on how to bring down the price of commodities in the market. If a worker is paying 1 million naira as the minimum wage and the bag of rice is 900,000, the 1 million naira still has no meaning.
This has been shattered. What that means is that we will go back to the drawing board because Nigerian workers are battered as we speak, because Nigerian workers, the pay today literally is nothing.
Here is a list of members that make up the Minimum Wage Committee. I'll bring you that subsequently, but let's now talk to our State House correspondent, Femi Akonde. He joins me on the news from the nation's capital. Femi, talk to us about the scale or the scope of work before this committee and when a report is expected.
Well, we do not know when the report is expected, but one thing we know is that the current minimum wage, as we have it, the current Minimum Wage Act will expire in April this year. So we expect within that timeline that this committee would have made recommendations and submitted its report to the president. And that report will then be put together into an executive bill and transmitted to the National Assembly for legislation before President Bola Tinubu can then sign off on it, and it then becomes the national minimum wage law. It's going to last for another 5 years. The current minimum wage we have was signed into law in 2019 by former President Muhammadu Buhari, and that law also empowers the establishment of a tripartite committee that will sit and deliberate on all modalities for coming up with a new minimum wage. And one thing is basic here: they must ensure that it is within a range of what each tier of government can actually afford, both the federal, state, local government, and also organized private sector. It must be a harmonized rate, a harmonized minimum wage that all of these stakeholders would agree that indeed it is something they can afford and they can implement before all of these deliberations and recommendations are sent to President Bola Tinubu.
And where were these? What were the members of the committee drawn from? And what are you also hearing from the Labour Congress, as the organized Labour, as regards the expectations from this committee? I know they are part of the committee. What are their expectations?
Well, the expectations are quite high. They say that these new minimum wage, as they are being deliberated on, must reflect inflationary trends, because the inflation continues to go up right now, that the country is facing so much hardship caused by the removal of fuel subsidy and some of that tough decisions or policy decisions that this administration has had to make in the recent past. What Labour is saying is that this new minimum wage must be reflective of all of those, not just a meager increment or a meager addition to the current 30,000 naira as we currently have in the country. Also, the cost of transportation, the cost of healthcare, the cost of basic goods and services, and also the decline in purchasing power of Nigerians must be put into consideration before adopting a new minimum wage. That is for the Labour. I know this committee is a tripartite committee. On the state government side, representatives were chosen from each geopolitical zone. The South-South represented by the governor of Akwa Ibom State, the Northwest represented by the governor of Kebbi State, Southwest represented by the governor of Osun State, Ademola Adeleke, the North Central represented by the governor of Niger State, Mohammed Bago, and the Northeast represented by the governor of Bauchi State. So, all of these governors would also be outside the committee, meet with stakeholders within their region, meet with their governors at their own level, meet with other sub-national leaders to get their contribution into these recommendations that will be made to President Bola Tinubu.
Quite interesting, especially for the governors. We'll see how the back and forth will go in the coming days. Thank you so much for that update, Femi.